Sometimes to go to the next level, you need to learn a new technique. Welcome to part 3 of my Yumi cosplay from Code Lyoko, and today we're going to do part 1 of the obi. To decorate the obi, I'm using a technique called Sashiko, in which you create a pattern using running stitches. I did a test run on paper just to make sure I got it right, and it turned out to be a good thing because it took 1, 2, 3 drafts to finally get it right. I then cut my pieces out of Pellin 808 craft fuse, which is something that I know a lot of people use for their Sailor Moon bows, and then I drew the diagram all over again. Normally for Sashiko, you're supposed to draw that on the actual fabric, but even with heat pens, I didn't want to risk marking out my real fabric. You'll see why in a second. After I draw out the initial grid, I make diagonal marks going one way, then the other, and this creates the initial diamond shape. After that, I made little diagonals in the bigger diamonds, and that created the smaller diamonds. I then repeated these steps on all 3 pieces. Once again, I'll explain it another time. But anyway, this is the final result. Now, onto the real fabric. I'm using this silk dubioni from Silk Baron, and then I cut out the 3 pieces. And because this fabric frays very easily, I hit all the edges with fray check, because I'll be handling this a lot. Now, I hand sew the interfacing all around the edges to the fabric. To do the stitching, I use thread that is specifically made for Sashiko, as well as Sashiko needles. I bought both of these while I was in Japan. I began by going in one diagonal direction using a bunch of running stitches. You want to do all of this in one direction first before you switch to another side. Once I was done, I switched to the other side, and periodically I would check to the right side of the fabric just to make sure that my shapes were looking good. Main thing that you want to watch out for is that none of your threads are overlapping or getting too close to each other. Once that was done, I then went ahead and went in one diagonal again, but this time for the inner diamonds. And then I switched to the other side. To avoid doing too many knots, if a line ended on the inner diamond, I would just skip over on the underside. And from the outside, you couldn't tell at all. Once I finished all of that, I ironed it up. Because I used heat erase pens, this got rid of all the pen marks. And with that, I have one Sashiko done. The rest is going to take a while, so stay tuned for the next part.